Today I'm going to be talking about the 2016 revival of the musical Falsettos. It is one of my favorite musicals, and there are a wealth of topics I could pull from it to talk about. I'm going to focus on the main themes of masculinity, AIDS, and family structures. Originally, I was going to just focus on masculinity, but then while dissecting it, I realized that all of those three topics are really entangled, so I feel like it makes more sense to go over all of them. So without further ado, here's my video on falsettos and masculinity. Falsettos is a musical by William Finn based on a book by him and James Lapine. Instead of being one musical, it actually used to be three musicals called In Trousers, March of the Falsettos, and Falsetto Land. In Trousers tells the story of a man named Marvin who has a wife and children, remembering his past relationships and realizing that he prefers to be with men, and so he decides to divorce his wife. March of the Falsettos continues Marvin's journey of self-understanding and trying to find a happily ever after ending, and by the end, his world just kind of collapses around him, and he only really manages to salvage his relationship with his son. Falsetto Land takes place 2 years later, where Marvin's son is preparing for his bar mitzvah, and Marvin's ex-lover is suffering from a mysterious, life-threatening, and undefined illness. The illness is recognized as AIDS, but it's never named as such. The musical Falsettos takes March of the Falsettos and Falsetto Land and puts them into a two-act show, so a lot happens in 2 acts. Falsettos premiered on Broadway in 1992 and was nominated for 7 Tony Awards and won 2 for Best Book and Best Original Score. The musical was revived in 2016 and nominated for 5 Tony Awards, but did not win any. Falsettos was praised by critics for its musical composition, its humor, its character development, and its positive portrayal of non-traditional family structures. I'll be focusing mostly on the 2016 revival of Falsettos because it's the most accessible to me, but while the revival changed some major things, the topics of masculinity, AIDS, and family structures have remained more or less the same throughout the evolution of the show. It's also important to note that most of the characters in the musical are Jewish, and that is an important thing throughout the musical, but also focusing on that on top of my ideas would make the video way too long, so I had to focus on only the 3 topics I chose. Falsettos has a small cast of characters. The first act only has 5 characters: Marvin, Trina, Whizzer, Mendel, and Jason, and then the second act adds 2 more, Charlotte and Cordelia. All of the characters are fairly complicated, so I'll just give a quick description of each of them before getting into the story. And a small disclaimer, the term psychiatrist and therapist, or psychiatry and therapy, will be used interchangeably because they're used interchangeably in the musical. Marvin is the main character of the story. He is a gay man who left his wife to be with his gay lover. Trina is Marvin's ex-wife, and she is a woman who had been forced into the housewife role and who struggles to cope with this big change that Marvin has sparked in her life. Whizzer is Marvin's boyfriend, a gay man who isn't entirely concerned with traditional relationships or masculinity. Jason is Marvin and Trina's son, a young boy who deals with mood swings and with, standard preteen angst. Mendel is Marvin's psychiatrist, but over a short span at the beginning of the story, he also becomes Trina's and Jason's psychiatrist. And then in Act 2, Cordelia and Charlotte are introduced. Cordelia is a non-Jewish caterer who focuses on Jewish cuisine, so she is playfully referred to as a shiksa caterer. And Charlotte is a doctor who notices the AIDS epidemic start firsthand. And it's important to note that Cordelia and Charlotte are lesbian lovers. So, like I said earlier, the characters are a lot more complicated than just 1 or 2 sentences can convey. Also, a lot happens during Falsettos. It is 2 separate plays that were put together into one. So I'm going to try to summarize it without leaving out important information. To make this easier for myself, I decided to do 1 sentence per song, and to make it easier for you, the viewer, I will have a little label so that you know what song I'm talking about. There's a lot of plot, so I should just get into it. The first song introduces the characters in Act 1 and gives us some more information about Judaism. Marvin tells the audience how he left his wife to be with his male lover, but wants everyone to be just one happy family, and Trina goes to therapy to deal with her qualms about this. Marvin and Whizzer worry that their passion for each other is fading, And Marvin talks to Mendel about his relationships with Whizzer, Trina, and Jason, but Mendel is mostly interested in Trina. Jason is worried that Marvin's queerness will rub off on him, and Trina and Marvin try to get him to go to therapy. Whizzer and Trina complain about being forced to make the dinner for Marvin, but it's clear that it's about more than just the dinner. Trina talks about how she found out Marvin was gay and has a breakdown about it. Jason sees Mendel for therapy, and Mendel and Trina have feelings for each other. Mendel proposes to Trina, and Marvin complains about Mendel stealing his wife even though they're divorced. Trina is worried about getting married, and then men are men, and then Trina decides that she's okay with getting married. Marvin and Whizzer play chess and then break up. Trina and Mendel redecorate their new home while Whizzer moves out of the one he shared with Marvin. Whizzer laments his relationship with Marvin. Marvin, in a fit of rage over receiving an invitation to Trina and Mendel's wedding, hits Trina. And then a lot is confessed in the song, but the most important thing for my focus is that Trina explains that she married Mendel quickly as damage control for her father after Marvin divorced her. And then Marvin has a heart-to-heart with Jason. And that's just Act 1. A lot happens. So let's get into Act 2. 2 years have passed since the first act, and Marvin has 2 new friends, Charlotte and Cordelia, and has custody of Jason on the weekends. Jason is turning 13 soon, and they're planning his bar mitzvah. Jason wonders what girls he should invite to his bar mitzvah. Whizzer and Marvin reunite at one of Jason's baseball games. Marvin and Whizzer get back together, and all 3 couples are happy for the most part. Marvin and Trina are fighting too much over the bar mitzvah, and Mendel tries to reassure Jason that his feelings about it are normal. Marvin realizes just how much he loves Whizzer. Charlotte notices that young gay men are coming into the hospital with a mysterious illness, and Whizzer collapses and is taken to the hospital. Trina realizes just how much she's come to care about Whizzer, Marvin, and his friends. Whizzer is starting to feel better, and everybody's hopeful. Trina and Mendel beg Jason to make a decision on whether or not they should cancel the bar mitzvah, but Jason just wants to wait until Whizzer is better. Marvin and Whizzer spend some time together in the hospital, and Charlotte and Cordelia join them, and they try to ignore what the future will bring. Jason prays to God and asks him to let Whizzer get better. Charlotte tells Marvin that the disease Whizzer has tends to spread from one man to another, both further implying that the disease is AIDS and that Marvin could have it. Whizzer accepts that he's going to die. Jason decides to hold his bar mitzvah in Whizzer's hospital room with just the 7 of them, but Whizzer leaves early and dies off stage. Marvin sings about how his relationship with Whizzer changed him for the better, and then a final goodbye is said to Whizzer and the show. Wow. That was a lot. It was hard to make the summary more concise because a lot of these plot points come back in the analysis of the topics, so I didn't want to leave any of them out. With that out of the way, let's actually get into the dissection of masculinity, AIDS, and family structures. Like I said earlier, all 3 of these themes are very entangled, but I've separated them the best I could to make things more understandable. One of the biggest struggles with masculinity happens with Marvin. He believes so strongly in the traditional family and ends up forcing his partners into the stereotypical woman's role of cooking and cleaning, which eventually leads those relationships to end. He also somewhat looks down on Whizzer for his promiscuity and feminine interests like fashion.
Everything he owns is vile. Marvin doesn't care a whit. Marvin doesn't share my devotion to style.
Whizzer takes me by the neck.
What is this, wash and wear?
Whizzer has unlimited knowledge of Drek.
This relationship with masculinity and being the man even applies to more mundane things like playing chess. Marvin sees it as masculine to win and feminine to lose. So, when Whizzer wins the chess game, Marvin storms off stage and comes back with a suitcase for him. This starts a fight, and Whizzer complains about always having to take the female role in their relationship, even on things as insignificant as chess.
It was just... Whizzer's supposed to make the dinner, be a patsy, lose at chess, always bravely acquiesce, clip the coupons, make the dinner, and love him. This has gotta come to a stop.
This has gotta come to a
Marvin,
stop.
this has been a lousy but fabulous flop.
This eventually leads to them breaking up and pushes Marvin even further into this angry state that eventually leads him to ruin his relationships with everyone in the first act. Everyone in the first act has their own issues with queerness and masculinity. Marvin has his previously stated issues with needing to be the man in his relationships. Trina somewhat resents masculinity. Being the only woman in the first act, she feels like she has to take care of all of the men in her life.
It's crazy how they're acting. It's crazy my response. It's stupid how I love them. So dumb how I anticipate their wants.
Whizzer has made his way by being somewhat promiscuous and non-committal, which is seen in The Thrill of First Love, where he rounds down the length of his relationship with Marvin to 9 months, but Marvin rounds it up to 10 months.
We've been together for 9 months.
10 months.
9 months.
10
9
months. 10
months.
months.
In fact, we've almost survived a year.
Whizzer is, to an extent, scared to be in a real relationship. Mendel is uncomfortable with queerness, though he isn't really homophobic. In the baseball game, he is both uncomfortable with Whizzer asking if Marvin is still queer,
Is he still queer?
Am I queer?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
but also says looking at Whizzer is like eating treif. If you don't know, treif is a type of food that cannot be eaten under Jewish law, so Mendel is implying that looking at Whizzer feels sinful or guilt-inducing. And finally, Jason worries that Marvin's queerness will rub off on him and make him gay.
My father's a homo, my mother's not thrilled at all. Father homo, what about chromosomes? Do they carry? Well, they carry. Who's the homo now?
Another important point when talking about masculinity in falsettos is the song March of the Falsettos.
March, march, march of the falsettos, march of the falsettos. We, who is man enough to march to march of the falsettos? Come here.
It acts as an ode to the immaturity of the male characters. In the original script, the stage directions read, "The 4 men march in, wearing gauze versions of their costumes with their sexual things either exposed or exaggerated in neon. The effect should be both silly and eerie. Everyone marches and everyone sings in falsetto. Every so often, everyone jumps together, and when they do, their voices get even higher. They're very serious and very foolish and very manly." It's supposed to be a grotesque example of how childish the male characters are throughout the show. The last important detail is that throughout the second half of the show, everyone is planning Jason's bar mitzvah. William Finn explains, "There's so much about what it means to be a man in this show. It's not only the kid becoming a man, it's kind of the men becoming men. It's a metaphor that resonates." As the show goes on, all men find a sort of maturity, a process that is abruptly ended when Whizzer dies after Jason's bar mitzvah. In falsettos, masculinity and sexuality are extremely linked. Throughout the show, every character struggles with their own masculinity and sexuality issues, and those struggles are what make the musical. The portrayal of AIDS is incredibly important when it comes to masculinity and sexuality, and it's a key piece of the second act. Next, I'm going to talk about how AIDS is portrayed in falsettos, and the importance to William Finn to keep AIDS unnamed. We first learn about the disease from Dr. Charlotte in Something Bad Is Happening. She sings, "Bachelors arrive sick and frightened. They leave weeks later unenlightened. We see a trend, but the trend has no name. Something bad is happening." Even throughout the song, she sings about it, but never names it.
And I love her, she's
My spirit's sad when I read the magazines, men dressed in drag next to their moms. Fashion and passion and a filler, but not a word about the killer. I like the ball gowns, but Jesus, something bad is happening. Something very bad is happening. Something stinks, something immoral, something so bad that words have lost their
things
meaning.
don't get in our way.
Flying tales about stories that something bad is spreading, spreading, spreading around.
This is both because the disease is new at the time, so it didn't really have a name, and to address the epidemic in a way that everyone can understand it. William Finn didn't want AIDS to be sidelined in the show, but he also didn't think he could write about the horrors of the epidemic head on. He would later describe Falsettos as a catharsis for people who have been going through the AIDS epidemic as well as for people not going through it. The show allows for people who had only ever read about the epidemic to empathize with people who had lived through it firsthand. By directly addressing the epidemic, Finn creates this understanding environment. Another essential detail in the portrayal of the AIDS epidemic is the inclusion of Charlotte and Cordelia, two lesbians. They were included as a tribute to the lesbians who assisted gay men during the epidemic. There was a long time where people were uneducated about how AIDS spreads, and in that time, people were afraid to even be in the same room as someone who had it. During this time, lesbians stepped up to comfort gay men or really anyone who had AIDS. Lesbians played such a big role in the AIDS crisis that it started the push for the queer community to be called the LGBT community instead of the GLBT community. Finn believes that the inclusion of women in the story of Falsettos was incredibly important to the message of the show, saying that gay men's lives have a lot of women in them. This is important to come into the conversation, they should not be ignored. Even Trina, a straight woman, shares her perspective on AIDS, showing solidarity with Wizard despite her past qualms. Falsettos also directly shows Wizard's experience with the disease in both subtle and unmistakable terms. One of the more elusive details is a change in Wizard's racquetball outfits. When we first see him playing with Marvin in A Day in Falsetto Land, his costume is tight-fitting.
Ha! It bounced twice.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, once, then twice, you know it did.
That's not nice.
No, it isn't, but you're a pain in the ass.
When we see him again in more racquetball, it's noticeably more loose, showing that he's already been wearing away before we even see him go to the hospital.
It bounced in.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, hit the line, you know it did.
Just begin.
Are you kidding? Who's telling who how to play?
We see his struggle more directly in Unlikely Lovers and You Gotta Die Sometime. In Unlikely Lovers, Marvin and Wizard reflect on their relationship and try to process Wizard's impending death. Charlotte and Cordelia come to visit, and they try to pretend that everything's okay.
We don't know what time will bring.
I have a clue.
I have two.
Let's look like we haven't.
And each say nothing.
Sky.
It's blue.
I love the sky.
I love the trees.
I love bad weather.
I love the earth beneath my feet.
I love friends that hover.
The song is tender and melancholic, giving the audience a very intimate look at what it's like to be dying with no cure. In You Gotta Die Sometime, we see Wizard facing his death without the influence of other people. It is one of the only 2 times we see Wizard without Marvin in the hospital, likely because Marvin is preparing for Jason's bar mitzvah. Wizard goes through many emotions during this song. He wants to face death bravely and die with dignity, but he's still scared and angry and sad. Wizard's lament being cut off by the joyful entrance of Jason's bar mitzvah somehow makes this situation even more devastating, because we have the looming, ever-approaching reality of Wizard's death even during a cheerful celebration.
You gotta die sometime. You gotta die sometime. You gotta die sometime. You gotta die sometime. 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 Sometime.
Wizard, hey, suddenly it all came clear. I said, let's have my bar mitzvah here. Surprise!
The last major topic I want to bring up in this video is the way Falsettos addresses family structures. With the topics of masculinity and the AIDS epidemic, the musical shows a very unique way of coping with uncommon family situations. As we've already discussed, Marvin is incredibly attached to the idea of a tight-knit family in the first act, whether or not the members actually want that, and it's the catalyst of most of the events in the first act. He starts off in a traditional family with a wife and son, but he leaves his wife for a man, and he wants the 4 of them to stay close. Trina is clearly uncomfortable with this, and later in The Games I Play, Wizard talks about his dislike of the situation also.
It hurts not to love him. It hurts when love fades. It's hard when part of him is off playing family charades.
It becomes even more complicated when Trina and Mendel get married, and Marvin both loses his psychiatrist but technically gains a family member.
We called a truce, and fitfully we coexist. I'm still loose, she's still with the psychiatrist. So I don't have a psychiatrist, except on the Jewish holidays.
In the beginning of the second act, we're introduced to Cordelia and Charlotte, and it's clear that they are important parts of Marvin's family. Marvin has moved away from needing Trina to be part of his family, but he still thinks family is important. During the baseball game, we see the new family dynamics join together to watch Jason play baseball. We have the one group of Trina and Mendel sitting in the front, and the other group of Cordelia, Charlotte, and Marvin sitting in the back. The game is disrupted when Wizard joins the scene, and we learn that Jason has invited him.
What is he doing here?
What are you doing here?
Jason asked me to come. Since he asked me to come, I came.
Just what I wanted at a little league game. My ex-husband's ex-lover. Isn't that what every mother dreams about, having at a little league game?
This is played as a joke, but is also a catalyst for Marvin and Wizard getting back together. Near the second half of Act 2, right after Wizard is hospitalized, Trina sings about how she feels about the dynamic and how she reluctantly loves Wizard, how Marvin led Wizard into her life and now Wizard is dying.
I hold to the ground as the ground keeps shifting, keeping my balance square, trying not to care about this man who Marvin loves. But that's my life. He shared my life.
Near the end of the whole musical, they sing Unlikely Lovers. This song is interesting because it slots all four of them, Cordelia, Charlotte, Marvin, and Wizard, as lovers, as a family. Throughout the musical, and even in real life, the label of lover is reserved for someone you are in a romantic relationship with. During this song, they sing about how they're a family, but not by blood, and instead by love. They change the meaning of the word lover to better fit their relationship. It's more than a friendship, but not a traditional family, so they're lovers. Finally, in Jason's bar mitzvah, we hear the last verbal reference to their interesting dynamic. At a traditional bar mitzvah, Jason would have been called up to read from the Torah in the form of Jason, son of blank. But in Falsettos, it's more complicated than that.
Son of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, son of Marvin, son of Trina, son of Wizard, son of Mendel.
And God trapped to the lesbians from next door.
We've already seen that Wizard is important enough to the family to move the bar mitzvah to his hospital room, but this just emphasizes how important everyone is to the family they've created. At the very end, when they're grieving Wizard's death, the show ends with everyone in a big group hug. It's a beautiful symbol of the love they have for each other. Okay, yeah, I want to talk about chess and falsettos. It's too much of an interesting topic, and it's short enough, so I wanted to indulge myself. Chess plays a surprisingly important role in falsettos. It serves as an interesting metaphor for masculinity, but also for a sort of intimacy between two people. As I touched on earlier, winning chess is seen as masculine and losing is seen as feminine. Our first introduction to chess is when Jason is playing alone instead of with somebody. This concerns Trina.
Honey, why don't you go out and play?
No.
Sweetheart, I worry. Sweetheart, I do. I worry a lot. I worry a lot. I worry a lot. I could take you to the Jewish Center. I think you like playing chess alone. That's not normal.
What is normal?
I wouldn't know.
Jason doesn't really have friends, and he doesn't have someone to share playing chess with. He also uses chess as an escape, as he tries to start playing it during Father to Son to avoid the conversation that Marvin is trying to have with him. Jason playing chess alone could also be seen as him playing in a way that he can't lose, a way to prove that he's masculine and that his father's queerness has not been passed down onto him. The next time we see chess, Wizard and Marvin are playing it. Marvin beats Wizard over and over again until he just lets Wizard win, but instantly regrets it. This starts the fight I talked about earlier, where Marvin is mad about the chess game, but Wizard is mad about always having to take the housewife role, leading them to break up. Other than the small bit in Father to Son, chess isn't seen again until the middle of Act 2 during days like this. Jason brings the chessboard to Wizard's hospital room, and Wizard agrees to play. This shows how close they are, and Wizard has always been fairly close to Jason in the show, but then Jason tells Wizard that he'll let him win.
Wizard, hello. Gee, Garful.
Jason.
I think you need to play some chess.
Jason, sit down and begin.
I'll let you win, Wizard.
Don't let me win.
I'll let you win.
To be honest, I got some of my ideas for this section from a Tumblr post that I'll link in the description, but I like how they phrased this section, so I'm just going to directly quote it. In a way, Jason is trying to make Wizard feel stronger in a health sense, which can be translated to masculinity. However, Wizard acknowledges the fact that if a child has to let him win, it's just as bad as losing. Finally, at the end of the musical, Jason places a white king chess piece on Wizard's grave. It sparks many different emotions. It's a callback to the chess game, where Wizard won with a white king. It's a reference to Jason's love for Wizard. It's implying that, in a way, Wizard won at life. It's a sign that Wizard has just as much masculinity as anybody else. It's an absolutely beautiful way to end the show.
Welcome to Falsetto Land.
Falsettos is an absolutely beautiful musical that manages to tackle a wide range of topics from religion to masculinity to even chess. It's clear that William Finn and James Lapine took great care when creating the original musicals and book, and had an insane attention to detail when merging them together and working on the revival. Falsettos is a fantastic way to start looking at more queer media and leaves the audience with a unique perspective on ideas they potentially had never even thought about before.